What's going on? It's Dapper Don, and I am very excited to welcome you all back. The interview that I'd had planned this week was canceled due to some scheduling concerns. But like any good podcaster, I had an episode prepared just in case. And don't worry, I still plan to have guests on here at some point, and I've got things in the works that'll more than make up for this little hitch. For now, though, we'll be talking about mental health, my struggles with it, and my beliefs about it. Then we'll jump into talking about these dating apps and the type of mindsets and expectations they foster, as well as why the industry as a whole seems a bit scammy. Then we'll wrap up having a chat about how the homeless are treated in this country and why we desperately need to fix it. So strap on in, because it's going to be a good one tonight. But first, our news segment, What's New? Our first article up is a BBC News article. 6 Things That Could Get More Expensive for Americans Under Trump Tariffs by Michael Race, business reporter, BBC News. President Donald Trump has hit the pause button, for now at least, on imposing tariffs against imports from U.S. neighbors Canada and Mexico. Last-minute agreements with the leaders of Mexico and Canada have suspended for a month a tit-for-tat trade war in North America. The three trade partners have deeply integrated economies and supply chains with an estimated 2 billion, 1.6 billion pounds worth of manufactured goods crossing borders daily. Trump says he wants to protect American industry, but many economists warn such tariffs could lead to prices rising for consumers in the U.S. That's because the tax is paid by the domestic company importing the goods, who may choose to pass the cost on to customers directly or to reduce imports, which would mean fewer products available. So, what could get more expensive if Trump's tariffs eventually do go ahead? It's showing us cars could get more expensive, beers, Tennessee whiskey and tequila could get more expensive, houses could get more expensive, maple syrup could get more expensive. They're going to raise the gas prices, avocados. I personally think this is once again, Trump is trying to show how big his cock is, right? That's all this is. The guy's trying to show how big his cock is. But look at me, I'm making all these executive orders and signing all these laws in and doing all this stuff, and now I'm imposing this 25% tariff. Look at me, look at how powerful I am. The guy wants to be Kim Jong Un so bad. So bad. He wants to be Vladimir Putin so bad. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. I agree with some of the things he says, like the fact that we got fentanyl coming over the border and it's coming from somewhere. So we have to figure out some way to mitigate it. But everyone and their grandmother knows that this isn't going to stop it. Because just like with weapons, if you're not allowed to make something in one area, it becomes instantly in demand in another area. So we'll see how this plays out. But for now, let's move on. This is an NPR article. Vagus nerve stimulation may tame autoimmune diseases by John Hamilton. This one was posted yesterday at 5 a.m. Tiny pulses of electricity. Yesterday, February 3rd. I'm recording this ahead of time. Tiny pulses of electricity may provide the next big advance in treating diseases like rheumatoid arthritis. The pulses would be delivered via implanted devices that stimulate the vagus nerve, and they are showing promise in people with arthritis and other autoimmune diseases, including Crohn's and multiple sclerosis. And I think that's pretty impressive so far. I mean, I have multiple relatives with multiple sclerosis. So if this actually, works, that could be revolutionary. But I don't like new experimental shit because it's like buying a game as soon as it comes out. There's always going to be bugs, there's always going to be problems. So I prefer we perfect this technology, honestly. Currently, autoimmune diseases are usually treated with drugs that suppress the immune system, Some of these drugs are given by infusion and can cost tens of thousands of dollars a year. They also increase a person's risk of infections because the immune system fights infections. Vagus nerve stimulation might offer a way to augment or replace drug treatment, doctors say. We are speaking. This better be a guarantee. That's all I got to say. Neurosignals have the ability to reflexively control aspects of the immune system that, frankly, nobody had thought about before, says Dr. Kevin Tracy, president of the Feinstein Institutes for Medical Research at Northwell Health on Long Island. Long ass title, but okay. Tracy co founded Setpoint Medical, a company that hopes to market a vagus nerve stimulation system for autoimmune diseases. All right. So, I mean, I say be on the lookout for that. Kind of. Let's see if this works. I mean, we've seen great innovations come out in healthcare before, but I really hope this is a real thing and it's not just some flash in the pan. That's usually my worry with this type of stuff. But for now, move on once again. This is our last article, something that I thought was interesting. Federal employees told to remove pronouns from email signatures by the end of the day, posted on January 31st by a myriad of people. Selena Wang, Dr. Mark Abdulmalik, Ann Flaherty, and Will Steeken. Employees at multiple, and this is ABC News in case I didn't mention it before. I don't know, I might have. Sometimes I'll get going, forget that I said things. It's bad. Um, Employees at multiple federal agencies were ordered to remove pronouns from their email signatures by Friday afternoon. According to internal memos obtained by ABC News that cited two executive orders signed by Mr. Trump on his first day in office seeking to curb diversity and equity programs in the federal government. Pronouns and any other information not permitted in the policy must be removed from CDC/ATSDR employee signatures by 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday, according to one such message sent Friday morning to CDC staff. Federal employees with the Department of Transportation received a similar directive on Thursday, the same day the department was managing the fallout from the D.C. plane crash near Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. So yeah, this is another move in the whole removing equity thing, and I kind of want to talk a little bit more about that equity thing. Um, I think that there might be some merit to the policy if it's implemented right, but since this is America, and right now we have one of the most racist people on earth right now, it's probably not going to happen. But I think that when every issue comes down to, oh, you're a black man, or oh, you're this, or oh, you're that, I have a Dominican friend. She constantly tells me how she's tired of people constantly making everything about her race. She constantly tells me that. She's tired of people making everything about her race. She's tired of people making everything about how she's Hispanic. And she's tired of getting special treatment because of it. Because it's really kind of dehumanizing when your gifts and talents aren't appreciated in the way that they should be because of your race. You're basically almost being patted on the back and placated. Oh, you're this and you're Dominican? You're this and you're black? So I don't know, there could be some merit, but considering that equity and equitable treatment was what allowed us to even get to the point to be treated like that, to where people are leaving us alone and not harassing us for our race and our ethnicity or even how we identify. I don't know. Like, that may be another step in the wrong direction. If equity is an overcorrection, removing it is a severe undercorrection. Until we can stabilize the treatment of minority groups, we should not be taking away policies that give them even a little bit of an advantage. But our lovely president isn't thinking about these things. All he's thinking about is trying to look as powerful as possible, trying to be the most talked about man in the world. So, but anywho, enough of that. Let's dive into our first topic, mental health. So, I've been doing a lot of thinking about mental health, specifically in the realm of depression and anxiety. This thought process was first sparked after our last episode when I read that article about the guy with PTSD and how he learned to be happy again. And during that time of rumination, two things came to mind. I started to think back on my own personal experience with mental health, the hospitalizations, the system, the medication, all that. And I started to think about how badly we as a country handle mental health. Now, I suffered for years from severe depression and anxiety, which often led to situations where I'd almost commit suicide. I'd say in total, I tried this around 8 times. It used to be difficult to talk about, but I'm past that now. After all, I ain't got nothing to hide. They were all caused by a feeling of loneliness and purposelessness. I felt like I didn't belong in this world and that the world didn't want me. I don't feel that way now, but it certainly took some work on my part. What didn't help, however, were the hospitals, the therapists, or even the medicine. Not in the way that they should have. Every time I tried to take my own life, I would be hospitalized. And for those of you who've been in the system before, you know the deal with that. You go in, you get evaluated, they put you on meds, and you're stuck on a unit with barely any access to the outside world. Electronics, shoelaces, hell, they won't even let you have pencils or pens, you get crayons. And you don't get to wear your normal clothes. Not unless you want to wear your pants without belts and your shirts without buttons or whatever. No, 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 no. You get scrubs. And it's lovely because you get just enough breeze coming into the back to tickle that part between your back and your drawers. It's really lovely. It's really lovely. And then you get these lovely little grippy socks. Oh, luxury treatment, right? Um, all of this, of course, is designed to keep you from trying anything while you're under their care. So I understand it. I understand it. Don't get me wrong. I like to joke around about it, but I do understand it. And during that time, too, you're often encouraged to go to groups, the majority of which are just designed to give you something to do to keep you from going into crisis again. The rest of the time, outside of the 3 meals and snacks you get, is spent sitting in your room, which is really just a super small dorm area with one or two beds, an empty shelf, white walls, and a large window that you can't see out of because God forbid you let them see what they're missing. You can ask for things like notebooks or books to read, but for the most part, you got to get real creative if you want to pass the time in that understimulating hell. For me, that was competitively napping while I was in there. There were days where I'd nap and have the most vivid of dreams for anywhere from 8 to 12 hours a day. Couldn't tell you what those dreams are. I wish I'd written them down. But I'd be surfing on top of trains. I'd be running from tornadoes. I'd be an epic hero. I'd be a camp counselor. It would be a whole bunch of different things. However, even that could only help the sheer unending boredom for so long. And if you end up at one of the more rowdy hospitals, Val Vista, napping simply isn't an option because you may be too busy listening to the inane screaming of people a little worse off than you. And let's not forget the slamming of doors, the threats of violence, and the staff's utter refusal to help defuse these people. I mean, seriously, I was sitting in a room watching Paw Patrol, suspecting nothing, and then a guy just bursts in just screaming about absolute nonsense, while the behavior technicians were standing there watching him. Like, I don't care how tired you are. Uh, don't choose the job. And this is another thing I hate. That we have a great amount of choice in what jobs we get and what areas we choose to get qualified in. And yet half of the time you get around people who don't want to do their jobs. What? Excuse me? How does that make sense? So you went after the registered behavior technician certification knowing that you would have to actively deal with people who are a little bit worse for wear mentally, and you don't do anything. What was the point in you going through that program? I don't know. Those people really get on my nerves, but we're going to move on. But anyways, you have the luxury of being both bored and scared for your safety, And here's the beauty of it: your escape from this pastel colored Dante's Inferno is contingent on the ER doctor's approval. Someone who gets to go home every night, fuck his wife, and watch Scrubs while you sit there listening to the banging, screaming, and chaos, regretting not just life, but also seeking help. And these pompous asses are more than happy to keep you there for weeks, so long as your insurance will pay for it. So they'll look for any, and I do mean any reason, to keep you for just one more night or just a couple more nights, as if every night isn't the most agonizing experience of your life. Eventually you leave, having been prescribed some long ass named medicine with that no one is even sure will work, only to, in my case, return to the exact same hospital for the exact same issue just a few months later. My life was like this for years, and I swore there was nothing I could do about it. That is until I decided to ditch the medicine and do the work myself. Now, that's not to say you should stop taking your medicine or doing therapy if you're on it and it works. I'm just talking about what worked for me. There was no amount of outpatient counseling, no amount of telehealth visits, no amount of medication that was more effective than the mindset shift that I forced myself to undergo. But this mindset shift, just like in the article we read last time, was not just smile, think positively, put on a happy face, act happy even if you're not. No. This mindset shift was me learning to appreciate every bump and bruise, every hobby, every quirk, every success, and every failure that made me into who I am. I realized that there was nothing wrong with me and kept reaffirming to myself, even on the days that I did not believe it so much, that I have just as much of a purpose as anyone else in this world and that I belong just as much. It took a long time, and I had to cope with the fact that there was no one who could help me but me. But I am able to tell the story, so it wasn't all for nothing. But pep talk aside, I say this to say that our mental health system is inherently flawed, and therefore can only provide so much help before the work is left in the hands of the sufferer. And I think that comes from one key thing: turning people's experiences and feelings into a business. A factory like institution where you go in, get drugged up and given a label, and go right back out to suffer with a slightly muted version of the same thing you went in with. They don't treat the problem, they medicate the symptoms, so you can even forget that most people can't even get the bare minimum of service because they can't afford it. Imagine not being able to afford vital treatment and being left suffering because the country you're in has decided to turn your well being into a cash cow. Now, I'm not saying all doctors in that field do this, and I'm certainly not saying we don't need mental health services. These institutions have helped a lot of people, and those results can't be denied. But we have to acknowledge that more and more issues crop up the deeper into it you look. To emphasize my point, I have pulled some articles from various sources talking more in depth about this. This one is an NPR article, and this sort of talks about how most Americans with mental health needs don't get the treatment they need. They don't have access to it, a report finds. This is by Ritu Chatterjee, and this was December 13th, 2023, so still kind of relevant. Roughly two-thirds of Americans with a diagnosed mental health condition were unable to access treatment in 2021, though they had health insurance. And only a third of insured people who visited an emergency department or hospital during a mental health crisis received follow up care within a month of being discharged. These are among the findings of a new report by the actuary firm Milliman, released Wednesday. The mental health advocacy group Inseparable commissioned the report and also released an accompanying brief offering policy solutions to address the gaps in mental health care. We kept hearing nightmare stories about Americans not getting the treatment they were needed because insurance companies were denying them care, says Bill Smith, founder of Inseparable. But we didn't have enough data to show just how extensive and deep the problem was. The report is illuminating and timely, says Miriam Bendat, a psychotherapist and an attorney who wasn't involved in writing it. We're dealing with an issue that is on top of the mind for 9 out of 10 people. While the overall findings aren't surprising, it is striking that the access impediments remain what they are, adds Bendat, who founded Psych Appeal, a law firm focused on mental health insurance advocacy. These barriers include a workforce shortage, poor reimbursement rates for providers, and substandard enforcement of consumer protections and laws requiring that insurance companies cover mental health conditions. So essentially, insurance can't pay for it. Oftentimes, they're understaffed, and oftentimes, they don't even have the budget to give you proper care when you are selected for treatment. And that could leave you susceptible to abuse, neglect, or just in general being thousands of dollars in debt. You have to pay so much money in this country just to not suffer every day. Can you believe that? Can you believe how much money you have to pay just to not be in mental anguish? It's like, if this is the land of the free, I would think that you could be healthy for free. I would think that the only way to pursue freedom is through health. But that's capitalism for you. Oh boy. But, anyways, let's move on to the next article. This is an article from Penn LDI, Leonard Davis Institute of Health Economics. Worsening faster than it's improving, the U.S. mental health care delivery system. This is by Hoag Levins, and it was September 29th, 2022. Although the White House, Congress, and state governments have launched various new initiatives designed to improve the U.S. mental health care delivery system in recent years, a panel of experts convened by the University of Pennsylvania's Leonard Davis Institute of Health Economics, LDI, concluded that overall, the system is worsening at a faster pace than it is improving. The percentage of U.S. adults who receive mental health treatment is increasing, said Rachel M. Werner, MD, PhD, moderator and LDI executive director, as she opened the virtual seminar focused on payment and policy solutions for the crisis. There aren't enough providers to meet existing need and to ensure equitable access to treatment. Over 75% of U.S. counties don't have a prescriber, and wait times for treatment can range from weeks to months. So imagine you're like me and you want to die. You don't want to live anymore. You want to take your own life. You want to get out of here. It's urgent, right? And you can't even. It's now to the point where you can't. And some doctor tells you that you have to wait months or that you have to wait weeks to even see somebody. You know, that's worse than calling the hotline and having them tell you to hold on, put you on hold. It's like these things aren't treated with the urgency that they need because it's like our country can't. It's like, and so people that are in my situation, see, I was lucky to be able to even get the help that I need, if I'm being honest, even if it was substandard. Most people aren't even able to get the substandard stuff. Really puts things into perspective. Imagine that's you. If any of you have ever received treatment, imagine that you weren't able to receive treatment because of this type of thing. For younger people, the situation has become dire enough that the Surgeon General of the U.S. issued an advisory for protecting youth mental health. The cited 2021 advisory reported, even before the COVID-19 pandemic, mental health challenges were the leading cause of disability and poor life outcomes in young people, with up to 1 in 5 children ages 3 to 17 in the U.S. with a reported mental, emotional, developmental, or behavioral disorder. It's really serious. It's serious. And COVID-19 really only worsened it because it forced, before 2020, the US was wearing a nice little mask, a nice little facade. We were all, pretending that everything was so happy and free and great, and everybody was just social and a social butterfly and an extrovert, and everybody was out there and in your face, and everything was just so awesome and cool. We had our issues, but it was great, and everybody had just the biggest mask on. And then you want to know what happened in 2020? It revealed everything. It revealed everything because it forced these people, even somebody with the smallest bit of mental disorder, in isolation, it forced it to get bigger. It forced it to become the forefront of most people's focus. And it forced little developing issues to become these huge monsters that people now have to fight. Hell, during the period of time when COVID was at its worst, I had a friend take their own life. Nobody even knew that she was mentally ill. Nobody even knew what she was going through, and she took her life. That just goes to show just how much the quarantine and all the things that people had to go through in that quarantine, the fact that we kept having hope given to us, hope of a better solution, only to have it snatched away when we realized just how little we could predict from this virus. That started to really stoke the fires in people, in a bad way, and it caused people to behave in rash ways. I mean, we could go into the riots, we could go into all the deaths from COVID that drove people mad, we could go into all the horrible ways that our politicians handled it. We could go into all that, but at the end of the day, what really matters is the fact that humanity got exposed. Humanity's true selves got exposed. And what also got exposed was our inability to properly treat the people going through these horrible, horrible things. But anyways, the article goes on to say, in the obstacles and insufficiencies section, the panel discussion that they had touched on a wide range of obstacles and insufficiencies that have combined to leave so many mentally ill patients without adequate care for so long. Included were the current contentious tangle of social, economic, political, crime, and health issues that have created an unnerving national sense of unease and distress, severe mental health workforce shortages, because everywhere is understaffed now, maldistribution of those clinicians who are in practice, long-term lack of investment in the fragmented mental health care system at all levels of government, siloed practices that keep primary care and mental health care rigidly separate, insurer and government payment, and administrative restrictions that thwart access, failure to enforce the Mental Health and Addiction Parity Act of 2008, data collection and policy metric systems that grossly underrepresent minorities, homeless, and incarcerated populations that have the highest levels of mental health illness and needs, lack of the provider diversity required to adequately address the mental health needs of people whose first language is not English, and concern that one of the most effective new innovations in mental health care delivery, telehealth, may be curtailed when the relaxed pandemic regulations that enabled it end with the expiration of the National Health Emergency Declaration. So even telehealth, something that's made to help people who can't necessarily get to the doctor, but who still need that help, but who can't necessarily find a doctor in their local area or just can't get to the doctor in general. Yeah, those could be taken away too. This country is in a mental health crisis. And it's starting to we're starting to step back. We're starting to step back. We're starting to go back instead of forward. And when it comes to mental health concerns, those things are urgent enough to where we probably should not be doing that. And those are just, a few examples. I mean, all over the country, we're seeing lack of affordability, potential abuse and neglect, lack of access, lack of availability, prison-like hospital stays, and most concerningly, a lack of care. I've got one more article. When going to the hospital is just as bad as jail. This is by the Marshall Project, posted by Christy Thompson, and it's showing that it was posted on November 8th, 2020. The ambulance was rushing to a psychiatric hospital with Y strapped to a gurney, asking the medics why. Why were they taking her there? Just that morning, she'd noticed her speech quickening, a symptom of her bipolar disorder, and made an appointment with her doctor for the next day to adjust her medication. She knew she was wavering, but was being proactive so it didn't disrupt her life. She asked to go by her middle initial only, concerned that speaking openly about her mental illness could affect her current job search. Her middle initial is Y. Y had called the police herself that night to report that her children had been out with her ex-husband and never came home. But as soon as the cops learned of her diagnosis, she said they treated her like a crazy black woman, rather than a mother understandably frantic about her kids. She claims they handcuffed her, called an ambulance, strapped her down, and took her to John George Psychiatric Hospital outside Oakland, California, against her will. Officers weren't arresting her. They were detaining her under a state law that empowers police and other first responders to take people who they think are a danger to themselves or others to a mental health facility. At the hospital, Y claims a nurse injected her with antipsychotic drugs while she was restrained. She says she blacked out, only to awaken as nurses shoved a needle into her other arm. It felt like I was being punished, like I was in a prison, she said. How is this supposed to be healthcare? It was by far the most traumatic experience I've ever had in my life. In this year's national reckoning over race, justice, and policing, many have asked why armed officers are most cities' default response to someone in crisis. These interactions can have fatal consequences. This spring, police in Rochester, New York asphyxiated Daniel Prude while he hallucinated, and in October, Philadelphia police shot and killed Walter Wallace Jr., a black man with bipolar disorder who was holding a knife. Cities across the country are considering removing law enforcement from many of these encounters to prevent violent outcomes and to keep people with serious mental illness out of county jails. And also, why the fuck are we punishing people who have illnesses that they can't control? It's like, aside from the horrible hospital stays and all that, yeah, why are police the first response to this type of thing? Why are police the first responders? These people who are supposed to punish bad guys are our first response to people with legitimate mental health conditions. These people with guns and tasers and uncomfortable handcuffs. That's how you respond to someone who wants to take their own life, or somebody who's experiencing hallucinations, or literally any other thing. That's how we respond to that. Something that people can't control. We punish them. Y filed a complaint with the Oakland Police Department over what she called a rough, unnecessary hold, but the department's Internal Affairs Division decided their officers had acted legally and in line with department policies. Spokesperson Terry Lightfoot for Alameda Health System, which runs John George Hospital, said in an email the hospital prioritizes the least restrictive forms of treatment. No, they don't. And uses injections only if there's an immediate safety concern for the patient or others in the unit. That's not true either. Only about 10% of emergency patients receive involuntary medications. They actually threaten pretty loosely with those. I was in a hospital where they were threatening to inject people every time they so much as got frustrated at something. So that's definitely not true. Just as communities of color experience more police violence, they also face disparities in the existing mental health system. Alameda County, California has the highest rate of psychiatric holds in the state, over 3 times the California average. Black people make up over a third of those brought to the hospital's emergency psychiatric ward, but just a tenth of the county population overall. Right there, that tells you something is dramatically wrong with the system, said Lorna Jones, executive director of Bonita House, an Oakland-based community mental health organization. And it kind of, again, it just highlights that how we handle these holds, these things, it comes off as punishing of someone for having a mental health disorder, which also discourages people from getting help because nobody wants to go through that either. So, I really kind of want to close off this section and move on to the next thing because we're, don't want to take up all the time on this, but I kind of want to close off this section with this thought. If getting healed is going to be more traumatic and painful than staying broken, then what's the point in even doing the work? That's a thought a lot of people, myself included, going through these things have had to contend with in one form or another. So before you go judging people for not getting proper help, ask them if that's something they feel they're even able to do. But for now, we're going to move on to a bit of a lighter subject. Before the last subject we have to dive back into is a little bit on the heavy side, but I'll keep it short. We'll talk about these damn dating apps. So for those of you who aren't super familiar with dating apps, which should be very few of you, unless you're like, I don't know, unless you're like eating stewed prunes for dinner, they've essentially turned finding love into a video game. You swipe on someone cute, you swipe left on an uggo or two, and you spend enough money, and eventually you'll level up to get attention from one of the many cartoonishly arrogant NPCs, provided you yourself have high enough attractive stats. Now, this is a harsh description, but it's one that I've found holds the most merit. You almost never find the love that you're looking for on these sites unless you're extremely persistent and can tolerate a lot of rejection, and yes, this goes for both men and women. And the few bits of attention that you do get are from bots, OnlyFans people, awkward people, crazy people, and people who use you. Yet people are willing to spend thousands of dollars, massive amounts of money on subscriptions to these sites. I mean, for God's sakes, the paid features for Tinder are outrageous. And I'm gonna look those up right now. Just kind of so you can get an idea of this. So the basic tier of Tinder is free, but that's where they limit your swipes and they limit how many people see you, they limit everything. It's basic. You would have to be on there for years to get one match on basic. Tinder Plus costs $7.99 per month or $95.88 per year. And that's your unlimited likes, unlimited rewinds, which means you can see somebody again, incognito mode, and the ability to change your location with the passport feature. Tinder Gold, however, costs $24.99 per month or $299.88 per year. And this includes your super likes, which is more likely to get attention because it's a bigger emoji, I guess. Tinder Platinum costs $30 a month or $359.88 per year. It includes weekly super likes. And you can also get two Tinder Select for $500 a month or $6,000 a year. You know, most people's rent. So if you want to spend a rent payment on Tinder every month, it's an invite only, exclusive membership that includes early access to new features and a virtual badge. It also includes a 5-point screening system for quality and engagement. So, essentially, and then that's not even the only Tinder, that's not even the only features. Those aren't even the only paid features. Those are just the subscription tiers. But if you want to boost, they make you pay for that. And I'm going to look up the Tinder boost prices right now. And this is kind of common across all dating sites, but Tinder's the most prime example. They're not. Why aren't you showing me the boost prices? Well, it's generally it's like $4.99. But let me look. That's not it. So yeah, you can get 6 hours for $69.99, 3 hours for $39.99, 12 hours for $129.99. At least that's what I'm seeing here. So yeah, you can literally spend hundreds of dollars on that app a day, and there still won't be a guarantee that you get matches. If you go on that, I've been on that app with the best features. I've bought everything. And the only thing I got to see was that I could see people you could see people swipe left on you in real time, which really does wonders for the self-esteem. It really does. It really does. And they tell you that if Tinder doesn't work for you, use Bumble or Hinge or BLK, but to be honest, these sites are all the same. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't the same guy running them all. The pattern is literally swipe, swipe, bot, swipe, crazy person, swipe, OF model. Another rant, real quick. Nobody wants to see your crusty, dusty ass OnlyFans. I'm sorry. But everywhere, every time you turn around, somebody's messaging you about their OnlyFans. Subscribe to my OnlyFans. Subscribe to my OnlyFans. I should go do OnlyFans. Nobody wants to see your crusty, dusty ass on OnlyFans. Nobody wants to be the father of a daughter on OnlyFans. Nobody wants to be the uncle of a niece on OnlyFans. Nobody wants to be the brother of a sister on OnlyFans. It's like, you have arms, you have legs. And from what I understand, women are just as capable as men. Find something else to do with your time. I don't know. It's like nobody wants to see that. Literally nobody wants to see that. Too many people, and actually men are guilty of this too. Too many people think people want to see their ass. And I'm telling you right now, the answer is no. No sir, no ma'am, no they, them, no whatever. No. Too many people think too many people want to see their ass. No. Not ever. I'm not going to start an OnlyFans. I'm not remotely in the bracket for that. And plus I have different passions. But I'm not remotely in the looks bracket for that either. It's like, it's okay to know your limits. It's okay to not be attractive to everybody. It's okay to make money legitimately. It's okay. Not everybody wants to see your ass. Sorry, fresh out of luck. But anyways, I suppose the question to be asked really about all of this is why? Why are dating apps so bad? I mean, the concept is simple, right? put a bunch of people on a site and let them choose who they want to without them having to leave the comforts of their own bed to go have an awkward conversation like how our older generation did. It allows those who aren't necessarily the most comfortable with talking to people, which is most everyone since quarantine, to find love in a safe environment. I mean, it does wonders. It should be foolproof. Well, that is until you consider the fact that the only way to really guarantee your profile will be seen is to pay a little money, as we've seen. Or until you consider the fact that the only way to guarantee you'll get shown to the right people is to pay a little money, as we've seen. Or until you consider the fact that you can't even swipe on enough people to get matches based on the law of averages until you, guess what, pay a little money. What am I posing to you? I'm saying that, just like how the medical industry thrives by taking real people's problems and turning them into a business, dating apps do the exact same thing. Loneliness is a huge problem for both men and women in this country. Most women generally don't feel safe enough to be their open and authentic selves because a lot of men are absolute psychos and creeps, and it's more important to preserve one's skin than to give them full access to you on the off chance that you're one of the good ones. So for those of you who are like, all women are this and all men are that, there's a reason. There is a reason. And most guys, as a result of this and being misguided on how to treat women, end up being misunderstood and ignored unless their looks and personality fall into a certain spectrum. So women saying that all men are this and all men are that is like, you don't know that for sure, but I understand where it's coming from. And men being mad at being ignored unless they fall into a certain bracket, feel that. I definitely feel that. This is obviously not always the case too, but it's what you would most often see. Dating apps are supposed to be the answer to this and create a safety net for both sides where an individual can be fully, for the most part, assessed before a meetup even happens. But they often employ tricks to make it harder for certain people to even get a scrap of attention. And as a result, feelings of loneliness intensify, which causes you to need the app more. And the way that they're set up makes them naturally addicting to the pleasure centers in the old brainy box. These articles that I found here actually illustrate this issue perfectly, I'd say. This is a Vox article posted in 2021. Why dating apps make you feel awful? By Rebecca Jennings. In 2015, the journalist Nancy Jo Sales, she of the Bling Ring and many a buzzy celebrity profile in the 90s and aughts, published an article about Tinder. But it wasn't really about Tinder per se. It was about Tinder and dating apps like it were ushering in a new dystopian romantic landscape in which sex was the result of an algorithm and relationships were almost never actually formed. Instead of offering real human connection with a single swipe, Sales argued that dating apps were simply turning up the dial on hookup culture, and hetero women were once again left to work out the mental gymnastics to convince themselves that actually this was good. And throughout her years reporting the story and later her books, Sales became one of Tinder's most enthusiastic power users. A single mom in her 50s, she reported finding particular success on the apps with young men in their 20s, some of whom turned into exciting trysts, others awkward sexual partners, and one a life altering heartbreak. Well, to be fair, I was swiping on some older moms on those sites too. But we gonna move on. We gonna move on. And those are subjects of her book in which she recounts her childhood and what she went through and blah 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 blah. I'm trying to get to the point. Yeah, but people who would normally not have had these thoughts in their heads are doing this because of dating apps. I call it big dating. It's like big pharma in the sense that they're more interested in selling you pure pills than curing what's really wrong with you. What did I just say? What did I just say? Dating happens 24/7 now, whereas there used to be times when we date. To the extent that disruption is good business, I see it as an insidious thing because they're disrupting our lives, especially women, people of color, trans people, LGBTQ people, people who are more vulnerable to abuse. There has not been a reckoning at all in the way it needs to happen. And they surveyed about 1,200 women and found that more than a third of them reported being sexually assaulted or R-worded by someone they'd met through a dating site. One of the points you turn to a lot is that dating apps make people feel disposable. and that they gamify dating. What impact does that have on the way that we date? Everybody's on these sites now, and I think different generations use dating apps in slightly different ways. Older people sometimes retain the dating norms of their generations, but I also think that the app controls our behavior and makes us treat everybody as disposable. My friend, who is referred to as Constance in her book, who is 60, feels like she's getting used by all these guys who are her age. And men, on the flip side, can experience this same thing. So we're seeing the presence of those crazy people, the gamifying of dating, the treating of symptoms but not the full issue, and the lack of doing that thing, that they're made for. Or yeah, to find love. And it can also be pretty addictive, this thing. These dating apps. This last article we'll read on this section is by Date Brazen, the scientific reason dating apps suck and how to beat them. Y'all, dating apps are built to scientifically addict you. As shown by a study done by the FC Donder Center for Cognitive Neuroimaging in the Netherlands, dating apps hijack the brain's system of reward learning to keep individuals hooked. In this video, or in the article, I guess they had a video accompanying it. I don't care. I'm not watching the video. A huge issue this person sees from their clients is dating apps creeping into every moment of their day. I see constant swiping on the elevator, during work, at dinner, in bed, or even on a date. These dating app dopamine hits are like fast food, gratifying in the moment and fleeting. They also leave you craving more. To give yourself a chance at real connection, you need to limit the amount of time you spend on dating apps and messaging. But ironically, that also reduces your chances of getting matches. But yeah, it's gamified because it's literally swipe, 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 connection, swipe, 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 connection. It is made for it, and it's made to be addictive. And then don't even get me started on some of the weirdest standards that I've seen some people develop on these apps because of the fact that it's gamified love. Everything from you needing to make a certain amount of money to you needing to have a certain type of car. Hell, I saw one chick charging $20 a text. Yeah, that's right. To have a conversation with this motherfucker, you had to be ready to spend hundreds. And I bet you she was still dry as fuck. Shit, for $20 a text, you better be telling me some government secrets or some shit. Like, god damn. And I believe I've said this before in a previous episode, but love just simply doesn't work that way. When you find someone that you love, someone who connects with you down to the soul, all that shit goes out the window. All those ridiculous standards and tired, played out, childish games like ghosting, making you think that the either one has options and all that shit that people do that strengthen their facades gets thrown away. Your soul is laid bare, and your heart is exposed. So sorry to all you out there who think you'll find someone who aligns exactly with your ridiculous rules, but to the ladies, most guys that are balling like that and willing to spend it like that ain't going for you. And to the fellas, most girls that have it going on like that ain't going for you. But being on these fucking apps can honestly make people borderline delusional about their worth or lack thereof. And on the other side of things, I've literally seen people say that they're not anybody's type because they didn't get a match on these sites. I mean, can you fucking believe that? 8 billion people and counting in the world, and you think that you're nobody's type because you were rejected by a couple hundred people? You see how toxic this shit is? By now, though, I bet you're wondering what can be done by any of this. Well, the answer is simple. Don't boycott anything. Don't change anything, because no one person is going to change the entire system, right? Go outside. All of you. And now, to briefly cover our last topic for the evening, because I'm getting tired. I'm a little on the sicker side this week, so we're just going to keep this short. We're going to be talking about homelessness. I don't need to say that homelessness in this country is a rising problem, but I'm going to say it anyway. Homelessness in this country is a rising problem. And it's especially concerning when you consider that most people's idea of a homeless person is a crazed maniac with a beard down to his gut, talking to himself and terrorizing the general public. And I often wonder if that impression is rooted in truth or guilt. One thing I've noticed people do a lot is try to rationalize their way out of accountability for something they're failing at by implying the person that they failed deserved it in the first place. And I'm not saying that the more aggressive homeless individuals can't be dangerous, and I certainly don't recommend interacting with somebody displaying cuckoo tendencies. But no one deserves to be on the street, sleeping in the cold, only able to rely on resources provided by an apathetic state and the few good people in the world, and not even knowing where their next meal is coming from. But it's almost like our society punished people for even daring to be in these positions in the first place. And I just wanted to bring up this hostile architecture thing. This is by the Oklahoman, by Jesse Christopher Smith, posted on January 18th of 2025. Rocks under Oklahoma bridges stirred debate. What to know on hostile architecture housing programs. Boulders spread underneath overpasses and bridges throughout Oklahoma City are stirring up debate online about the best strategies to tackle homelessness. Large rocks have been placed on both sides of the sidewalk underneath the Oklahoma City Boulevard Bridge crossing Western Avenue. Officials said the rocks are meant to prevent people from sleeping under the bridge or setting up tents at the location. Many critics have blasted the move as anti-homeless and an example of what is sometimes called hostile architecture, a design strategy meant to limit the use of public spaces. Other terms used by critics include defensive architecture or exclusionary design, which detractors say targets the homeless population specifically. But staff with the local Key to Home program, a public private partnership working to dramatically reduce unsheltered homelessness in Oklahoma City, said the decision stemmed from concerns about safety. What is Oklahoma City using Why are they using large rocks underneath bridges? Jamie Cabes, the city's homeless strategy implementation manager, said Key to Home moved 27 people from the site into supportive housing. We don't ever take any measures like that without housing people first. Additionally, this location is particularly dangerous because it's really close to a busy street, and there's just not much in the way of grassy area and the street. So essentially, we're dealing with, and this is the benches, right? You ever sit outside and see like the benches at the bus stop with the little handlebars going in between each section of the bench? That's also been criticized for that. It's like these people who can't find anywhere to go but the street because most homeless shelters are often full, and contrary to what people believe, a lot of homeless shelters turn a lot of people away, especially if they're not able to make it back in time to secure a bed. People who are forced to sleep on the street can't even find any place to sleep anymore. There's people out here dumping water on homeless people and all that shit. And it's like, and again, I said I was going to keep this section short. I just want to remind you all to have some empathy. We should not be punishing people for daring to suffer in front of us, or daring to beg, or daring to just want their life. They're just wanting a place to sleep, or just wanting some cover or something. Like, that's such a twisted way of thinking. People who, because they have everything, right? They're born with a silver spoon up their ass compared to these other people. It's like now you hate them for daring to suffer. Oh, okay. But I bet you if you were in the situation, oh, you'd be begging like a motherfucker. Just have some empathy. It's like I hope we didn't lose that since COVID. But anyways, that concludes today's show because I'm tired. If you like this show, or even if you didn't, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell, etc., etc. Make sure to go follow me on Instagram at DapperDon1012, and if you want to be a part of next week's show, you can either message me there on Facebook at Don Piper, or you can message me on Instagram at DapperDon1012. And make sure to tune in next Wednesday at 6:30 on the dot for an all-new What's Going On with Me, your illustrious host, Dapper Don. You don't want to miss what I have in store. Peace.